Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dorothy here from the CCMA. You're very welcome to our first sponsored webinar in this series of webinars we've been running for the last couple of weeks. So a lot more faces on the screen today compared to our normal CCMA community chats. So lots of really interesting information to share with you today, and great to see so many people joining us. I'm going to give, as I normally do, about 2 minutes just for everybody to log in and get ready. And I see the numbers slowly climbing, which is great. And so I'll let everybody just quickly on the call that you can all see, do a quick hello and say who they are. So Niamh, I'll start with you if that's okay.
Yep. Hi guys, I'm with Divert and I'm facilitating this webinar here today, working with Dorothy.
So she's our techie expert. Thank you, Niamh. Thanks a million. Anne-Marie, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Sisson and I work at IT Solutions with John Finnegan, who is also on this call, and I work on the customer success team.
Great. John, I'll let you go next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. John Finnegan, Customer Success Director with IT Solutions, and I'll be doing most of the presenting.
Jacob.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jacob Mollett. I'm the Technical Services Director for EMEA in Europe for LivePerson.
And last but not least, Simon, if you don't mind saying hello.
Yeah, hi everyone, Simon Wood. So I'm VP of Conversational Experiences at LivePerson. I'm based in our London office, and I tend to work with, for the last couple of years, been working with some of our biggest clients who are committed to going fully conversational. So glad to be here.
Great, thanks a million, everybody. So I see most of people have logged in, which is terrific. So we're going to kick off, and I think just to put in context the importance of this webinar this afternoon, I suppose over the last couple of weeks, a lot of CCMA member companies and friends have moved to remote and smarter working, given the current crisis we're all in. And I know certainly one of the challenges from speaking to a lot of companies has been redirecting calls to individuals working remotely and the whole technology around that. And I think what's interesting about today's webinar is we're going to talk about another channel messaging that will hopefully provide an alternative and maybe an easier solution for some of you who are still maybe grasping with the challenge of redirecting calls and a huge surge in calls. And John and his team here are the experts on that. So delighted now to hand you over to John. Just before I do, to say we want this to be as interactive as possible, as always with these webinars. So any questions, please put them through and I'll let John know they're there. And as always, we'll have a recording of this webinar and a copy of the presentation available, but I'll come back in on the end. So hand over to you. Thanks, John.
Great.
Sorry, John, just before you jump off there, I just wanted to do a little check that if anyone's having audio issues, to maybe just pop it in the questions area if you lose audio at all during the time, and we will kind of be monitoring that. Sorry, John, just jumping ahead of you. Apologies.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks everybody and welcome to you all, and thanks for taking the time to attend this webinar. As Dorothy said, we are in unprecedented times at the moment, and we're faced with enormous challenges over the last couple of weeks, and no doubt we'll be faced with more challenges in the coming weeks before we get back to some kind of normality later in the next couple of months. So in particular, many of our customers and agents have found themselves in a situation of stress and anxiety at this time. And even though many of us had business continuity plans in place, organizations have had to make decisions on the fly to keep operations going and provide the best customer agent experience within the various technology and operational constraints. So today we're going to talk about what we're seeing in the LivePerson ecosystem, and we're just going to talk about our own environment of over 18,000 customers and how our customers are coping with the COVID-19 crisis, and hopefully that's going to help you guys. So just in terms of what we're going to discuss today, so the biggest trend we're experiencing is the amount of customers who are shifting voice calls to messaging. And why? Very simply because it's a better agent and customer experience, but particularly in this environment where agents and customers are all working from home. So I'm going to talk about the agenda, why contact centers are moving their calls to messaging. I'm going to then hand over to my colleague Anne-Marie, who will walk us through the steps in setting up a messaging operation. And finally, when that messaging operation is set up, What are the opportunities and challenges you may face? So we're supported, as the guys were introduced, by our colleagues in LivePerson, Simon Wood and Jake Mollett, and they can add additional insights to what they're seeing globally. If you can change the slide there, Niamh, that'd be great.
Yep.
So first of all, the thing that we're seeing is our conversational volume is up 90% month over month. So March 19 compared to March 20, we're up 90%. And we took some stats there last week, and we saw that week over week, our conversational messaging volume is up about 30% week on week on top of that 90%. So it's really it's really busy, you know. And so more consumers than ever now need help from their brands. And they're counting on their telcos and their banks and their healthcare providers and for their travel providers. So this is where all this volume is coming from. And more consumers than ever are shopping online for what they need versus going to the stores for obvious reasons. And this is driving huge usage in retail. You may have seen on the RT News last night, there's a 5-fold increase in the number of product categories. Freezers, hair clippers, laptops, toys, video games, musical instruments, and pet supplies have all seen online demand skyrocket. We're seeing interesting extremes in consumer behavior as well. March has been bigger than Christmas for alcohol retailers. Funny that. And at the same time, we're seeing smashing sales records for home exercise equipment. So brands are also beginning to shift volume of their voice operations to us as well for other reasons. So we're going to talk about why are they doing this. And I'll just go back there. Or actually, what we might do just now is, Simon, do you want to give some insights into what you're seeing in terms of various brands and what they're doing?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, here are some good examples of the volumes increasing, but there's a really interesting theme that we're seeing across all of these customers, and it's really crystallized over the last 2 weeks. So I think what the customers we're working with are definitely seeing that this is the new normal, right? So this is not a short-term disaster recovery situation. This is the new normal. None of the customers we're working with are thinking that at some point when this is over, we go back to business as usual as the call center with thousands of people in centers all together in sequential voice after voice. So, so that means that a lot of them are looking to really accelerate plans they've had, and that's changing the conversation. A good example, UK Bank, you know, 2 weeks ago, the conversation was, you know, we get messaging, we like it, but, you know, we're going to cap it at about 60 agents for this period. You know, over the last 2 weeks, that conversation's gone to, we want WhatsApp up next week. We want to take 2,000 people home and we want to move all of them onto messaging. So it's a theme that this is the new normal, and what it's doing is accelerating plans that may have been a 2 or 3 year horizon into something much, much closer to as soon as possible.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Simon. Niamh, if you can move on there. Yeah, so this is a nice slide. So I'm sure this is how we all envisaged working at home. Beautiful sunny day, loads of space, loads of room. And I think if you move on to the next slide, this is actually probably the reality for a lot of us, you know. And certainly it's the reality for me. So I have 4 teenagers in my house. And before I went on this call, I had to tell everybody to stay off the broadband, no Netflix, no Google Classrooms, no house party. So my wife is a national school teacher. She's on a Zoom call downstairs with her colleagues. So I said, look, if the bandwidth goes dodgy, I'll WhatsApp you and you have to jump off that, you know, so let's hope I don't have to do that. And just another piece of added stress to this is I've also warned the kids not to burst into my room looking for a pair of socks or God knows what. So we know that agents are operating in house shares, living rooms, bedrooms, and these are just not conducive to voice calls. We're all multitasking with our families, we're cooking at home more, we're helping out with homeschooling, and we're all trying to do our normal job at the same time. So it's very difficult for to do this with voice. It wasn't really built for that. So why messaging? If you can move on there, please, Nate. So messaging is technically very easy to set up. Basically, you just need a browser. It doesn't use a lot of bandwidth, and you log in and you're up and running as a messaging agent. We even have an iOS app. So if you want to do it on your iPad, that's fine. But probably the biggest thing about messaging is it's asynchronous. And I think it's better, we can spend a little bit of time just talking about that. So in our world, we talk about synchronous and asynchronous. So voice calls and live chat are synchronous. So I'm on, the agent is on, we're having a conversation. If either of us drop off, that conversation is gone. Asynchronous is WhatsApp, SMS, Facebook Messenger. So you're not expecting an immediate response. The conversation is always alive. So I can say to the agent, I can say as a customer, you know, this is my question. The agent can say, I'm going to get back to you on that, John. I'm going to find out the best answer for that question, and I'm going to come back to you in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. I'm quite happy with that. I'm used to WhatsApp. I don't expect instant responses all the time. Just set my expectations, and that's fine. So that setting expectations, that taking the intensity out of those conversations of voice and live chat and putting them into this more asynchronous type of environment is really good for customers because they're used to it. It's really good for the agents because it helps them manage their situation a lot better. Also, we're looking at the whole messaging conversations that are coming in, and especially during COVID, we're seeing lots of customer intents that are coming in these messages. So people who are worried about their financial situation, cancellations, renewals, deferrals, all that kind of stuff. And we can see common themes very quickly. So we can use automation and we can stand up a bot to maybe take some of those conversations and self-serve them for the customer and take the pressure off the agents. They can always transfer to an agent anyway if they're not happy with the answer, but that's another way that we're able to deal with it with automation. We're standing up a bot at the moment for an insurance company in the UK who unfortunately their whole technical infrastructure for home working wasn't great. They can't get access to a lot of systems from home. The agents are under a lot of pressure. So they've asked us to stand up a bot that is going to, you know, set expectations, do some FAQs, capture the inquiries out of hours, during hours. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing in these kind of difficult kind of times. So automation is really useful for that kind of thing. But also, this is a really important time for brands and customers. You know, this is the time that customers will remember. Brands have to step up and go that little bit extra to help out their customers. So people will remember this time. If they went onto their brand and they asked for help and those brands really stepped up and helped them out, they will remember that when this is all over. So one of the things that we're able to do, because if you can imagine in this WhatsApp asynchronous type channel, that conversation is alive. Now, tomorrow night, we'll all turn on the 9 o'clock news and the government could tell us the situation has changed again. We're going to do something else. You know, some of those things that the government might say will affect our brands. Wouldn't it be great if our brands could just reach out to those customers before they flood the lines again and say, hey, we know this has changed. We know it's going to affect you and we're going to try help you. So this is the situation. So we can proactively go out to all those customers in those channels and let them know before they come to us. So these are the reasons. It's easy, it's asynchronous, there's automation opportunities, and we can proactively reach out to people. Simon, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Those are all great points. It's again the theme on the last couple of weeks, how the conversation has changed so quickly. I just pull out a couple. So some companies who, you know, disaster business continuity is pretty much run by technology. Often the first reaction was, let's lift and shift the call center into everyone's home. And I think as your examples showed in the pictures, you know, most agents aren't in an environment where the voice quality is going to be good enough. So, so that point about messaging, again, has accelerated customers to say, let's not just take it the voice call, but can we quickly transfer them into messaging agents? And lastly, going from a sort of a bricks and mortar, where if you think about voice-centric world as being built around micro skills, right? How do we segment the IVR and get micro skills to skilled agents? Asynchronous and messaging is much broader skills. So when you then don't have everyone in the environment and everyone's at home, we're seeing customers now manage themselves around intents. And the fact that it's asynchronous means that you're almost starting a multi-skilling. It's the new multi-skilling, because if I need to find out something or add to my knowledge to be able to resolve this for the customer, I've got that time to go and find it and then come back to the message. So those are 2 points that just in the last 2 weeks has really, gone up the agenda. Let's not just lift and shift call into the house, and let's also leverage the asynchronous nature to sort of fast track some of the broader multi-skilling challenges.
Okay, that's great. So I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Anne-Marie, and Anne-Marie is going to walk us through the steps in terms of setting up a messaging operation. So Niamh, you might move the slide on. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, John. So there are many different messaging platforms out there, and they're probably all implemented in a similar way. But our experience is with LivePerson's Live Engage. So that's the one I'm going to reference for the purposes of this webinar. So it really can be a very swift exercise to get up and running on messaging. And COVID-19 or not, we have customers that want to go live in a matter of days. And so once the paperwork is signed, this is how we do it. Our first meeting would be strategy and design, and this is to ensure vision alignment. It's important that everyone concurs on the expectations and goals at the onset of the project. We would then request that an account is provisioned, and LivePerson can turn this around very quickly. We will also help with any additional provisioning, for example, Twilio in the case of SMS messaging or WhatsApp. And we actually recommend these channels because they require less technical integration than, for example, web messaging, which is more akin to a sort of chat setup. And all of that, we'll help you with all of that. So we have our account and we have our vision. So we can start configuring the skills and users in order to route the correct queries to the right customer care professionals. And if you've chosen to use an automation, we can set that up at this time as well. So now we have everything set up, we can train the customer care professionals. And this may seem a little daunting with everyone working remotely, but our preferred method is train the trainer. And at IT Solutions, we regularly do remote training. So that in actual fact is nothing new for us. So a couple of things to note here. Your customer care professionals, they're going to be familiar with the messaging concept anyway. They're probably all WhatsApping or Facebook messaging their family and friends on a daily basis. So they're used to it. They're used to how it all works from a customer perspective. And secondly, Live Engage itself it's very intuitive, has a very easy to use agent workspace. With lots of tools and intelligence that can help the agents with their workflow. So you have your customer care professionals trained, you have your configuration done, we do some thorough end-to-end testing of all your endpoints, and you're ready for launch. And you just let your customers know where to find you, and we're off. And then, of course, post-launch, very importantly, we help you closely monitor your operations so we can start optimizing and reporting so that those KPIs and goals that we discussed in that very first meeting are being achieved. So anything to add there, Jake, Simon, John?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time in the last couple of weeks around those provisioning of channels. We set ourselves up a couple of weeks ago, interestingly, to do a lot of fast track IVR implementations. And what we found with our customers was that it was very hard to get access to IT resources. So we've seen a huge demand for the SMS and WhatsApp channels because they don't require a lot of internal resource. It's something that we can turn around very quickly, and we can provide those channels to our customers. But most importantly, once we give you the availability, give those channels and provision them for you, again, it doesn't require a lot of internal technical resource to push those channels out to your customers. So I think John mentioned it earlier, it's been very popular, the proactive method of reaching out to your customers on particular intents. Maybe it's a vulnerable customer base, perhaps over 60s, depending on your vertical, whatever it might be, and reach out to them proactively around the COVID crisis and give them information and try and deflect some of those calls out of the contact center. And that's something that doesn't need a lot of IT resource. It doesn't need to go into the IVR. Somebody with basic documentation can send outbound messages using the tool, just having the channels enabled. So that's kind of where the focus has been for us in the last couple of weeks from our customer base. Just thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just adding to that, Jake, and I think you mentioned the point about training, but I think it's often forgotten that the agents are messaging natives, right? So they already know the messaging, and it can be confusing sometimes when you think about WhatsApp, business chat, SMS, out of the app, off the web, off the IVR. But actually, the platform enables you just to focus on the conversation. What does it take to resolve the conversation for the customer? And it doesn't matter what endpoint it's set up, that will take place. So I think the point about automations as well, I think in the last couple of weeks, initially, either because of surging demand in industries like airlines, or just a lack of people, which hit across every operation, demand was a massive challenge. Again, this theme of we're not going back to the old world, this is the new normal. Automation is the key for scaling messaging, and that can be automation on the customer side, or it can be automation to assist the agent. So again, we're seeing demand on both of those sides to try and tackle firstly the volume, but to secondly really tackle how we're actually using messaging to help resolve it for the customer.
Okay, thanks. Neve, can we move to the next slide, please? Thanks. So we're just going to look at some of the operational opportunities and challenges that you can experience running a home working messaging center at scale. So moving away from voice allows your agents to serve multiple customers at one time. And of course, this is a huge benefit. So the customer, instead of waiting in a phone queue and eventually giving up, they can put in their message, and they know that their message is in the queue, that someone will look at it. So now you're offering many endpoints as well, and many of these are very popular, such as WhatsApp. It's likely that you will receive large volumes. And so your agents may find themselves with 15 or 20 or even more messages in their workspace at any one time. So while it's great, yes, we can take care of everyone, we don't want to stress the agents out either. So this is where we start looking at setting the expectations. So either through the system or manually, the agents can do it as well, as John described earlier. We can just set the expectation. So when the customer's message hits the queue, they'll get a message which tells them someone will respond to you in half an hour. And if that half an hour becomes unmanageable, then you change that to an hour. So the customer is used to this sort of asynchronous experience anyway. So that they don't mind that. They'll go off and do something else. And then, of course, once the reply comes through to them, they'll get a notification either through the WhatsApp or maybe the SMS channel on their phone, depending which method they've used. And they'll know that they've received a reply and they can look at it. And if that reply requires a further response, they can then start engaging again in the conversation. Okay, so setting those expectations is all important. Also, as Simon mentioned there, all the endpoints come into a single channel. So agents aren't dealing with WhatsApp, SMS. They don't have to deal with them differently. They just know have to deal with them. Yes, they are differentiated in the channels, so you can see where the customer's coming from, but the way that you deal with it is exactly the same. They're all in one workflow, so that's ideal. Okay. So
can I just sorry, Anne-Marie, we've had a question that has just come in. Is there a method for management to view the messages and responses by customer service agents in terms of QA, quality assurance?
Absolutely. So we, aside from being able to review those messages in real time as an agent manager from the agent manager workspace, there's actually an additional tool called the MCS, which stands for Meaningful Connection Score toolkit, which allows that's the whole point of that. It measures customer sentiment in every line that the customer writes. So and that's pretty much real time. So you can be have that tool working alongside and be measuring that meaningful connection score as you're going along.
Great,
Jake,
thanks, Alison.
Simon, anything to add to that?
Well, I would just add that one of the core features is a thing called smart capacity. So yes, you can have multiple conversations at the same time, but not every conversation is treated the same. So if a customer is inactive, so they're not responding, then that gets less priority than one that's more current. So they may, again, part of the design of the intent would be, if we know that for this intent the customer is expecting a more urgent response, then you can build that in. So it's a clever algorithm that sits behind the platform and effectively prioritizes the conversations for each agent. So they just have to work from top to bottom, not getting stressed out on a mob. The other question around, yes, the team leader in this environment is looking at that real-time dashboard, and they'll be getting prompts about service levels that have been set. They might want to interrupt, or they might want to move conversations in the queue as well. So yeah, it's a different type of dashboard for that real-time management, but that is a core part of what that team leader does in this messaging operation.
Great, thanks, Simon. And that question came from Serena. Thanks, Serena.
Okay, so the second point here is moving to messaging allows the introduction of automation. Now, we have already discussed this, but again, once you have those huge volumes, we can start. There's a tool called Intent Analyzer, and we can that will in real time tell you basically what your customers are talking about, and so that enables you to dig into those conversations and make the necessary changes on the fly. And those changes might be adding an automation or tweaking your existing automation to handle a particular intent that's coming in that perhaps isn't currently managed in the automation. Or it might not be anything to do with the automation. It could be simply adding a piece of predefined content or canned answers into the workspace for the agents to use. Or it could be something to do with wording or advice, perhaps on your website, or it could be to do with changing a process. And as John had mentioned before as well, proactively messaging to advise of a change can also help alleviate queries that are coming in over a particular concern that a customer may have. So that's an opportunity, as I mentioned, to introduce automation and other mechanisms there. The third challenge might be keeping the agents supervised remotely. But as Simon mentioned, we have the real-time dashboard, which gives you a snapshot of what's happening now. So it will show you the customers in the queue, the waiting for the response. It will also show you an MCS and CSAT measurement in real time. And it also shows you your agents who are online and their workload that they have at the moment. So it is perfectly possible to supervise remotely. Aside from that, of course, as John mentioned, the agents are they're in an environment. They might be in a noisy environment, but that doesn't matter. They can still communicate with other people to to get an answer. So they can you might have an internal messaging system where they can communicate with the supervisor or with colleagues, so they can get answers to questions that they might not know. So again, with that, it's time management, the setting the expectations and the internal communications that you can have, and letting the customer know, I'll get back to you in an hour. That's fine, and in that hour I will find that answer out from the supervisor by some other means, perhaps some other internal messaging tool that you might be using. So yeah, perfectly easy to manage with the tools. Also, agent managers can join conversations, and they can take over conversations should that become necessary. So those capabilities are there as well. And then finally, regular operational performance and review meetings. These are an absolute must to keep things on track. Okay, and again, these can be held remotely. That's no problem. So we can do deep dives into your KPIs, which are different to the KPIs for synchronous channels. We can do transcript analysis to make sure that the customer care professionals have adopted that messaging methodology, and that there's a very simple methodology, which would be ABC: acknowledge, build, and close, and that last being the most important, perhaps in this new world, because with a messaging conversation, as you know, there's no definite end to it. A customer might not get back to you after you've given them an answer, or they might take their time in getting back to you. But if you're confident that you have given them the right answer, then be brave, close that message, and then it removes it from your queue. And remember, the customers can always get back to you, and in those authenticated channels like WhatsApp or SMS, that's just, for them, it's just a continuation of the conversation. So it's closing those messages is really something, an important thing that agents should be doing, and not holding on to them or transferring them back to the queue. So agent behavior, all those sort of things, we'll help you review them and understand the best behaviors for the agents.
And Anne-Marie, just one other question in from Alison. Yeah. Can agents escalate cases or send to another workflow?
They absolutely can, yes. So there is a transfer capability there, so they can transfer to a different skill queue, or they can transfer to a named colleague, whichever is suitable in the particular scenario.
Great, thanks.
So Jake or Simon, anything to add there?
Yeah, one thing on the transfer side, you can transfer to a bot as well. So if you have a sort of a low-level use case, something that's like a process that needs to be completed, you can transfer to a bot to complete that process to save your time on the agent side as well. So that's what we tend to refer to as a bot tango. So that's another important transfer functionality to think about too.
Okay, Niamh, if you want to move on to the next slide. So I think we're actually at the end. How are we doing for time, Dorothy? We promised you.
Yeah, we're 14:34. So just if we could close out in the next couple of minutes. Can I just say before you go through the last slide, if anybody's any comments or questions, if you could put them in the chat box. For some reason, I'm not able to see the question box, but Niamh has been very good in forwarding questions to me. So any comments, queries, questions, if you could put in the chat box, that'd be great. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's all. You know, we just want to let people know that. So we've done about over 100 projects for LivePerson all over the world. You know, all sorts of time zones, and we always work remotely. Like it's rare that we will actually go on site. So, you know, standing up people's messaging operations in this environment is perfect for us. You know, a lot of our staff work from home anyway, as a business as usual. So it's not so different for us. So just to give people the confidence that you know, we can help out, we can get things going really quickly, and we can give them some advice if they're going down their own route. You know, so just reach out to us, and we're happy to help. You know, like these are very difficult times at the moment. So we're there, just happy to help. So thanks a million, everybody.
Great, thanks, John. Serena just has another question. Average turnaround time for setting up?
Okay, who wants to take that?
Jake's the expert in setup, but it's days, right?
Yeah, it's days, you know. So we, prior to the crisis we're currently in, we would have allowed several weeks for some of these projects just to give our clients the time to marshal their resources, get through their internal governance, deal with security, legal, that sort of thing, get access to resources. But what we found recently is that can, as Simon was saying earlier, the 3-year plan becomes the 3-day plan, and in the same vein, the 6, 7, 8 week project becomes the 1, 2, 3 day project. If everyone gets behind this and gets through all the required stages, makes the right decisions in a timely manner, and involves the right resources, you can turn this stuff around in a couple of days. It really is fast to deploy, especially those channels I mentioned earlier, like WhatsApp and SMS. There's a couple of days lead time on getting a WhatsApp channel set up and enabled. That's primarily around the sort of Facebook lead times. But if you're in parallel managing that, making sure you've made all the decisions before you start the activation process, getting your agents trained, there's no need for it to take any longer than 2 days. SMS can be quite a lot quicker. If your priority is speed, I'd avoid some of the more complicated channel deployments when you're thinking about which channels to use. Maybe shy away from doing the IVR integrations, like I mentioned, a lot of our customers are already doing, because that can take a few days to get that proved out and sorted. Shy away from other channels like in-app and focus on those really easy messaging channels, maybe even Facebook Messenger as well. Those are really fast to get out of the door. And then your real consideration is not the technology and the time, it's how you introduce those to your customers and what the entry point into those channels will be.
Yeah. I think there's an important link there on the automations as well. So again, you know, most companies will have some sort of automation program, but I think what we've seen forced in the last couple of days or weeks is people wanting to get automation and bots up and running within a matter of days. So this isn't about the perfect end-to-end integrated solution. It's about quickly getting Conversation Builder deployed. And it's not about deploying a bot and leaving it. Just like a new agent, they need to be trained and coached, and that's part of one of the new roles that sit within the operation of a conversational center.
Yeah, like I know from our own experience, you know, over the last 2 weeks, you know, that, you know, we've had a customer come to us on a Monday, you know, with an automation, with a bot requirement, and, you know, we've built it out in, you know, half a day. We've tested for half a day, and we've gone live on the 3rd day, you know. So, you know, for simple kind of use cases and all that, there's no reason you can't do that kind of stuff. Provisioning accounts is, you know, it's LivePerson guys are there, so we can always do it pretty quickly, but we can really do it quickly now. So yeah, so we can do stuff really quickly.
Great, thanks for that, guys. I'm conscious of the time, and I know we made a commitment to keep this as tight as possible. So can I formally say thank you very much to John, to Anne-Marie, to Jacob, to Simon. I think that's been a really interesting presentation. John, I know if anybody wants to get in touch, I know you contact details. If they want to just drop me an email, I can obviously introduce you to them. Right. Just to mention, I know Daryl Rowe and Niall Hughes from Virgin Media were on this webinar, and delighted that they took part. And from a, I suppose, best in class perspective, Virgin Media have been using the LivePerson messaging application for some time and are highly experienced in it. So I know I chatted to Daryl before the webinar, and they're more than welcome to talk to anybody who wants to have a quick chat with them in terms of their direct experience of implementing and running it. And I know they're certainly experts in the field at this point in time. So last 2 things, we will have a copy of the presentation on the website later this afternoon. We'll have a recording of the webinar up on the website tomorrow. It just takes a couple of hours to process. And just to remind everybody, we also have our next community chat tomorrow. It's an Ask the Expert panel with John Reardon from Shopify, who is a guru on smarter and remote working. So hopefully some of you can join us for that tomorrow. All the details are up on the events page, and any questions you have to put to John, send them through to me today or first thing in the morning. But thank you so much to everybody. Thanks to Niamh, I see her coming back on screen there. As always, W did a great job. And thanks to everybody, and we'll hopefully talk to you again soon. Thanks, John. Take care.
Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Bye.